From the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, this is Nebraska Farmcast, and I am Ryan Evans. On this episode, I'm joined by Brad Lubben, Associate Professor and Extension Policy Specialist here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Brad has closely been following the Farm Bill situation in Congress, which in November passed a one-year extension of the 2018 bill as it continues to debate the legislation of a new farm bill. But as he writes in his latest column for Nebraska Farmer, one decision that won't continue to be pushed off for producers is the Commodity Program Enrollment decision between Agricultural Risk Coverage, or ARC, and Price Loss Coverage, PLC. He's here to explain. Thanks for joining me again, Brad.
Good to be with you.
Can you just start by elaborating on some key aspects of the 2018 Farm Bill extension and the significance for farmers?
Well, we did see that Congress did, in fact, pass legislation, a continuing resolution that pushed off the funding questions into the new year. That continuing resolution included language to provide a one-year extension of the current Farm Bill. So instead of a 2018 Farm Bill that was supposed to be rewritten in 2023, it's now extended to September 2024, and we have a new Farm Bill debate or an ongoing Farm Bill debate to try and wrap up in the coming year.
And before we get to this year's implications and decisions that producers are facing about commodity programs under the Farm Bill, can you just quickly review the basics of ARC and PLC?
Yeah. So producers have commodity program decisions between something we call agriculture risk coverage, or ARC, and price loss coverage, or PLC. The ARC program really is a revenue safety net versus PLC is a price safety net. So there are different components that producers have to remember. Am I trying to enroll in a program that better protects revenue versus a program that better protects price? Is it a program that helps protect the first sort of measure of losses, or is it a program that pays longer and deeper when price losses go further? There's a lot of differences between the two programs. It's not as simple as ARC and PLC, but producers have to give some thought to the type of safety net they're really interested in.
So how do you see the Farm Bill extension impacting the decision-making process for farmers choosing between the two?
Right. So on the face of it, a simple one-year extension says, well, we just have another year of ARC and PLC, and producers need to make another basic decision between the two. The economics, however, are a little bit different, and the basic decision isn't quite so basic in the coming year. ARC protects producers when revenue, generally at the county level, when they enroll in ARC County. There's an individual ARC version as well. Not many people enroll. ARC protects producers when revenue drops below a guarantee. That guarantee is a function of the 5-year Olympic average yield, trend adjusted, times the 5-year Olympic average price, times 86%. There's effectively a deductible in there, and revenue kicks in when you fall below that guarantee. Compare that to the price loss program, which has a legislated reference rate, and revenue kicks in when the season average price the payment under PLC kicks in when the season average price falls below that reference rate. So those are the basics that we've understood for a while, but the economics in 2024 are actually different. We have had higher prices, which means that the Olympic average price has moved up, which means that the ARC guarantee sort of follows up higher prices. And so we've had a higher and higher guarantee under the ARC program over the last couple of years. But for the first time, we actually have a higher price safety net as well. The 2018 Farm Bill contains some provisions that would move the reference price higher if the 5-year Olympic average price also moved higher. I'm saying 5-year Olympic average price like we know what that means. The Olympic average is you throw out the high, throw out the low, average the rest. So over a 5-year period, you have to throw out the high year, the low year, and you average the rest. In 2024, that 5-year period looks back at 2018 to 2022. 1 year higher prices is enough, we throw it out. The second year higher prices starts to really count. The third year counts even more. We've gotten finally to that point where the 5-year Olympic average price has moved high enough such that the formula says for PLC, if 85% of that 5-year Olympic average is higher than the established reference price, then the reference price should go up. All of that to say, in 2024, for the first time, producers have a choice between ARC and PLC where the relative protection levels are nearly identical. In corn, as an illustration, the ARC guarantee effectively kicks in at around $4.08 a bushel for corn, assuming trend yields. Average yield times average price times 86%. If you take 86% of the Olympic average price, you've got around 408. For PLC, we've now moved high enough that 85% of that 5-year Olympic average is 402. So for the first time, we have an ARC and PLC safety net that are actually within pennies of each other in terms of where they would fundamentally kick in at particular price levels. That's true for corn. That's true for soybeans, a very similar sort of price comparison between the two. There's not an obvious advantage on paper to either program the way there has been in some past years.
So given that, the closeness of those price protection levels, how should farmers approach the decision then?
Yeah. So for the first time, it makes it more complicated. Instead of a simple decision that maybe is based on, well, which one do I think is going to pay first and which one's going to pay more? It's a little more complicated. What kind of risk are you most at risk at? Is it the revenue downfall that is not just a price loss, but also a potential yield loss that matters? Or is it deeper price protection? ARC kicks in perhaps faster since it's protecting this revenue shortfall instead of just a price component only. ARC maybe kicks in faster, but it also only pays on the first 10% below that trigger. That means it kicks in and then it also maxes out rather quickly. Well, it maxes out at a level where we generally think producers are already buying underlying crop insurance. So maybe that's the only window, that shallow loss provision, maybe that's the only window that they're really at risk of, and ARC fits perfectly. If instead they're trying to look at downside price protection that goes down as deep as the price could go, then PLC maybe kicks in and stays in longer over a bigger price horizon. PLC only pays on program yields, so it doesn't pay on every bushel. So it's not dollar for dollar loss. ARC isn't either. But they do protect different things. They theoretically kick in around the same level, but the way they work is different, and that matters to a producer.
Great. In your column, which, by the way, we have linked to on our website at cap.unl.edu and in the notes for this podcast, wherever you're listening to it, you discuss that interaction between crop insurance choices and ARC PLC decisions. So can you talk about how those elements interplay and what should be considered when integrating those tools in a risk management strategy?
So this whole discussion of comparing ARC versus PLC, it's sort of easy to reduce it to, let's just look at the program. Let's figure out which one is expected to pay more, and that's the simple economic answer. And I am telling you it's not that simple, even if you try and figure out just based on the farm program payment, which one really protects more, where does it kick in, how long does it help, what's your ultimate protection from that safety net. It's also related to crop insurance. ARC looks an awful lot like a revenue protection policy just at the county level. So that's the idea that ARC only kicks in for maybe the first 10% before you've bought an underlying policy like RP, maybe at 75% or so. And for a lot of Nebraskans particularly, buying RP is certainly the most popular policy, and buying it at the 70, 75, 80% level is amongst the most popular protection levels. So marrying up RP and ARC might look like a pretty good set. There is another crop insurance tool available called SCO, or the Supplemental Coverage Option. That was created by the 2014 Farm Bill. That's effectively a county level policy that mirrors or supplements on top of your underlying policy. So if you buy an underlying RP, revenue protection policy, then the SCO becomes a revenue protection policy that kicks in at 86% and goes down to whatever level of insurance you buy. It looks an awful lot like ARC in that sense, particularly for somebody that maybe buys 75% coverage. It's a county-based payment that stacks on top of your individual farm-level insurance policy. Because in that sense, SCO and ARC look an awful lot alike. Well, the rules as written in the 2014 Farm Bill says if you participate in SCO, you cannot participate in ARC. Or more specifically, if you are in ARC, you are not eligible to buy SCO. So it's not just really ARC versus PLC. It's ARC versus PLC plus the option to buy SCO if you're in PLC. Guess what? It gets more complicated. long story short, only a small percentage of producers have been buying SCO to date. And the higher levels of coverage of underlying protection that have been buying in Nebraska translates into less and less sort of role for SCO in the first place. If you're already buying 80-85% coverage in some areas, then the band that would be affected by SCO is pretty small to start with. So there's this idea that it's not really just ARC versus PLC. Maybe it's ARC versus PLC plus SCO, but to date, at least, SCO has not been that widely used. Doesn't mean ignore it. It just means to date that hasn't affected that many producers.
Well, these are certainly complex decisions.
Very much so.
Yeah, and as we record this here in the middle of December, preparing to turn the calendar to 2024, what's the timeline for producers?
Well, the timeline itself is rather interesting. The one that we're certain of is the crop insurance timeline is set for March 15th. That's when producers need to make those crop insurance decisions about their spring planted crops. That includes the individual coverage as well as the SCO and even something called an enhanced coverage option, or ECO, which is distinct from this. March 15th is that deadline. March 15th is also traditionally the deadline for farm program enrollment decisions between ARC and PLC. Because the extension of the Farm Bill didn't happen in a timely way, we didn't start ARC and PLC sign up early like it has in previous years. One could imagine that there might be an extension of that deadline for enrollment. Nothing like that has been announced to date. I can't advise that there's an extension. Even if there is an extension in an ARC and PLC decision, you still have a crop insurance decision that's sort of closely linked. So producers really need to think about this in early 2024 with plans to make a decision by March 15th and figure out how their crop insurance and how their farm program decisions marry up to each other.
All right. Again, for more, do check out Brad's column in Nebraska Farmer. We've linked to that again in the podcast notes and on our website at cap.unl.edu. Brad Lubben is an associate professor and extension policy specialist with the Center for Agricultural Profitability here at UNL. Brad, thanks for the great info.
Thanks.
Nebraska Farmcast is a production of the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. For the latest research-based information and education resources to manage your farm or ranch operation, visit our website at cap.unl.edu. That's cap.unl.edu.